Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. I am your host, Tom Gacker, and today we are chatting with musician Frank McComb, the soul singer with a voice similar to Donny Hathaway and at times like Stevie Wonder. At 51 years of life, Frank has lived a musical life working with Prince, Chaka, Will Smith, Branford, Marsalis, and Gamble and Huff, and so much more. Frank McComb will be performing at the City Winery in DC, December 20, 2021, and I recommend you check him out. He's an independent soul singer that draws you in. And if you can't get to the City Winery, travel to YouTube and to Spotify, Amazon, all those places, and check out his back catalog. You'll be washed with neo-soul, R&B excellence, and showmanship. Frank McComb is dynamic, and he is a talker, and that is a podcaster's dream. I don't really have to do any heavy lifting in this interview. I just have to hit record and just listen to these amazing stories. In this episode, we'll listen to Frank tell stories about Gerald Levert, Donny Hathaway, and Branford Marsalis, and the group Buckshot Lafayette. But before we get into it, just remember that Something Came from Baltimore is a podcast and a show, and we would love it that you would forward on to your friends, 5 of them, who love music just as much as you do. The full interview is available on Something Came from Baltimore on the YouTube channel. The link is in the show notes. I totally recommend you check that out. Now, let's enjoy the interview with Frank McComb. Frank McComb, welcome to Something Came from Baltimore.
Thank you, man. I love Baltimore. Absolutely. I love Baltimore. So thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to be on your platform.
Yeah, Baltimore's the best. It really is. We love everyone, but we don't want you to move here. We don't want to rent to go up. You're at DC City Winery November 20th at 9 p.m. It's a late night. Recommend everyone to check that out. Got some questions for you. Going through your bio, I just saw some really cool stuff. Like I'm a super fan of Gerald Levert. You came out of Cleveland and you worked with the Rude Boys, which was the Travell label, which is Gerald Levert's label.
Trouble Productions.
When you talk about Gerald Levert, I don't know anyone that has any bad stories. Like, I've never heard anyone talk bad, but you were in there at your infancy of your career and you were working with those guys. What was that like?
Man, for me, it was awesome because it was my first experience. I was a kid, coming up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I always had the desire to be what Gerald was, and as a recording artist, And it was really cool because the Rude Boys and I always crossed paths when we did talent shows. My band was always like Frank McComb Trio or Quartet or whatever I had at the time was always hired to be the house band for all of the talent shows, right? And Joe Little and Buddy Banks, those guys would come through and they would sing at the talent shows and we would back them up in the whole nine, right? But I remember when Joe came to me and said, "Man, Gerald just got to sign Atlantic Records, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Oh, cool. Congratulations," And they hit me up and asked me to be in a band. I was like, "Well, yeah, I'll be in a band. We can go and have our rehearsals and whatnot as long as I can still play my local gigs, no problem." So then at the time, there was a gentleman, Cliff Colson, who just passed like in the last year or so. He was originally the bass player. And he ended up getting called to go play for the Winans. So we brought in Marty Sims to play bass and they slated me as the MD in Cliff's place. So he was originally supposed to be the MD, but this is before we ever got on the road. So they threw me in the hot seat because they knew I knew how to run a band. And it was a really great experience because it was the first time I'd ever gone on tour. It was pretty cool for a guy who only had 3 piano lessons to be the MD of a group going on the road.
How about that? And they came out hot.
Yeah, how about that?
They came out hot too. They had like a #1 hit, first album.
Yeah. First album, #1 hit, written by Larry Marcus, written all over your face. The late Larry Bingo Marcus. I can't believe we lost two out of 4 Rude Boys. We just lost Buddy last year, But yeah, it was a great experience because they were the first to ever take me on out of Cleveland and to take me on the road, So September of '91, I'm 20, turning 21, and turned 21 in July of that year. So, it's a great thing, man. No dependents, no wife, no responsibilities, basically. And if it wasn't for that tour, I wouldn't have met the people that connected me with Jazzy Jeff, if it wasn't for that tour. So that tour actually started my professional career as a musician. Well, let me rephrase that. You become a professional the moment you make your first dollar doing something. So they just took my little professional career that I had just started playing in them clubs and them bars and took it to another level. And I had always wanted to get out of Cleveland and explore and get out there out there in the world and see what it's like out there. And I mean, I knew I was going to leave Cleveland and play music. I had to be about 8 or 9. I knew I was going to leave, but I knew what I wanted to do from the time I was a little child. I would say 3 or 4 years old. I knew what I wanted to do for a living. And to be with the Rude Boys, to be with Gerald, to be with the legendary Eddie Levert, it opened up my mind. It was encouraging for me, and it let me know that I could do it too. So after that tour in 91, I was gone. It was great being around them because I saw if they could make it out and they could do it, then I can too. It was encouraging. I know Eddie and Gerald used to tease me all the time in rehearsals because I would never sing. Frank McComb Trio, when I was riding around in Cleveland playing all those bars, I only played. I would never sing. I only played. And Gerald and Eddie would talk about me. I would come to rehearsals a little early at treble, and they would come over and stand near me, just close enough for me to hear them, like a little off in the distance, but just speak loud enough for me to hear them. And Eddie would say to Gerald, "Hey, Gerald." Gerald would say, "Yeah, Pop." Eddie would look at him and say, "See that little fool over there? He don't want to make no money. He won't open up his mouth and sing. He won't open his mouth and sing. He just want to play." So for Eddie to talk about me like that to Gerald Levert, he must have seen something in me too, not just as being a musical director or for the Rude Boys or just playing around Cleveland, Ohio with a quartet or a trio. He even he said, "Man, don't you ever get up from the piano. Don't you ever let no company, no manager, no nobody make you get up from the piano and never sit back at that piano and perform because that's where your magic is." He said, "I'll kill you myself." But we were laughing, of course. he said that's because so Eddie's believed in me from the time I was a teenager all the way up to the time I became a recording artist, was sharing the bill with him. Still believed in me. So it's one of the greatest things, man. It's one of the greatest things. And I'm telling you, the Levert family was always consistent. You don't find much consistency in this business with people, but they're consistent. They were very consistent. Even Sean.
Let's listen to the lead-off single from the 1994 recording, Buckshot Lafayette, Breakfast at Denny's, the Uptown version. I'm going back to 1994 with you with Buckshot Lafayette. You were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had that. I was thinking, did I have it on CD or vinyl? I had it on vinyl. And Breakfast at Denny's was so controversial at the time. And
was it?
it kind of blew things up.
Yeah, man.
1994 with Branford Marsalis, he did keys and vocals on this album. And it's funny how it didn't get good reviews, but if you flipped it to 10 years later, you guys were really innovative and you were ahead of the curve, I think.
Oh, yeah. But it's usually like that, man. Anytime somebody comes out with something new, you're going to get slammed for it. But then everybody else start catching on, and it takes that one person that'll take the chance on something new that comes out. And then everybody else wants to jump on it. But I tell you, Buckshot Lafayette opened the doors for a lot of groups. Branford had he had great ideas, man. The first joint, the debut was the self-titled Buckshot Lafayette. See, during that time, it was a bunch of people on the record because Branford had all these ideas. You got Kevin Eubanks, you got Tane, you got all these folks on the record. But it wasn't until he actually put the touring band together right after that first record was done. He put the touring band together. And when we got on the road, that's when Buckshot Lafayette became Buckshot Lafayette. We got on the road performing the stuff from the debut album, but we wrote songs while we were on the road and we tested them out on the people. If we got a good response, the song was a keeper. If we got a medium response, then we'll go back and go back to the drawing board, clean it up. But if we got like barely any response, the song was scrapped. So Branford he always kept a little studio set up like in the back of the bus. So we were always coming up with ideas. And that's when Music Evolution was born. We wrote a lot of that stuff on the road. And we put it on the Music Evolution album. That's Buckshot Lafayette. So I remember we were touring somewhere in Europe. And I think we were in Finland somewhere. And we get to the venue really early because we had to take this long drive overnight. So we get to the festival grounds really early this next morning, and Branford wakes me up out of my bunk. Everybody else is still asleep. And I'm like, man, what, man? I'm asleep. He said, come on, man, we got to find a piano. Come on, I got this idea. So we walk off the bus and we going from stage to stage to stage on this festival, just walking through this whole festival because it was a huge festival. Finally, we get to what I believe was the Crusaders stage. Joe Sample, they had just got this nice Steinway up there for Joe, right? And he said, well, we need this piano. So, and if you know Joe Sample, he don't want you touching nothing he's playing on, right? So we go to this Steinway. He started playing these chords. Dong, dong, just pounding them out. Dong. And then he looks at me and says, another day. Dong, dong. Looks at me again and says, ta-na-na-na-na-na. So I grab his hands from the piano and I'm like, look, Branford, it's too early for this. What the hell is ta-na-na-na-na-na-na? What are we singing here? He said, I don't know, but you're going to help me write it. Before I do it, we were back in New York before I do it. And we finished writing that song Another Day. Come to find out, another day turned into it was number 5 on the R&B charts and number 1 on the pop charts. Turned out to be a huge hit. And the record company was ready to scrap Buckshot because it was just taking up too much money to keep a big band out there. That song got us on the road for another, I think, year and a half. Wow. Just that one song itself.
Another day, staring out of my window, thinking about tomorrow, wishing things were clear. No need to rush, I ain't gonna worry. Any moment my sorrow is bound to disappear. Sometimes I tell myself I'm better off without you.
Yeah.
We're going into Donny Hathaway. Your voice is, oh my God, it's like it's a dead ringer sometimes. It's not intentional, but he only had 4 albums. What was your favorite album of his? Do you remember?
Really can't say because all of them struck me, from Donny Hathaway Live to Everything is Everything to, Extension of a Man. They were all great albums. I tell you the one thing I thought was disappointing, though, is the music was great, but the one that came out in 1980 after his death, Donny Hathaway in Performance, great music. I think a lot of that music was from the time he toured 71, 72 when he did the first album and that came out in 72. But what I didn't like was the graphics. Donny, he didn't stand up. Did you see that cover? He didn't stand up and sing. So Donny was at a Wurlitzer, a grand piano, or a Fender Rhodes.
Yeah.
But they got this drawing of this guy with a hat on and a button-down shirt with his arm out, standing up with a microphone. And that wasn't Donny at all. Whoever did that was an epic fail. And if you flip the album over, you'll see a picture of Donny from the same tour in 1971. So I'm like, who packaged this? But the music itself was great.
Yeah.
His version of Young, Gifted, and Black live opening the album, man, incredible.
Yeah.
What I loved about him is that the man knew how to sing live. He knew how to play live. Back then, you had to know how to play and sing live. You didn't hide behind auto-tune and all the tricks and gimmicks in the studio. You had to really have talent. You had to be gifted or at least talented, especially to pull it off live. You had to. People have been asking me to do a tribute album to Donny for like years, like at least a decade. And I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it because I just felt, okay, I don't want the comparisons. I don't want people telling me, he didn't do it this way. There's people are cruel. He didn't sing it like that. He didn't. I don't want to hear all that. So, but then I was asked by the bitter end if I would do a live record, which is the same place Hathaway did his record in 71. And, recorded in 71, released in 72, the Donny Hathaway live album. And Roy Ayers told me, when New York and Hollywood call you, never tell them no, because they may never call you back. So I told him, I said, yeah, I'll do a record here. I'll do a record. I remember what Roy said. Roy said when they called him about doing the soundtrack to Coffee, can you do the soundtrack? And he was like, yeah, I can do the soundtrack. Roy told me, he said, man, I didn't know the first thing about a soundtrack, but I made it work. See, he says, so if they ever call you, you better make it work. And that was the time. They ended up calling. I didn't know they were going to call. They'd ask me. So I said, yeah, I do this record. I got back to my hotel room and I said, how in the world am I going to do this record? Man, Roy, God. So a couple weeks go by and I end up having a conversation with Benson. Benson is like family to me. He's like my uncle. I've known George since I was 17. He'll tell you too, 17 years old. And, we're just talking on the phone. And then, he starts telling me about this Nat King Cole tribute album he was doing. And that's when I told him, well, the bitter end asked me to do an album, but I don't know how to do this, man, because it's just me. Booby School Music is just me. There's no record label, booking agency, management, no money machine behind me. It is all me, my whole career after leaving Columbia. I told George, I said, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this record because, I don't have the funding for musicians in New York or to put myself up in a hotel in New York. It's so expensive. How much do you need? I said, well, George, I didn't call you for no money. I called to just talk to you. And I'm just bringing this up to you because you brought up Nat. He said, well, I got one better for you. Donny never did an album, a solo album, just him and the piano. He said, don't go in there and do that record by yourself. And if there's ever time and place to do a tribute to Donny, this is the time, and that's definitely the place. I was in the house when Hathaway did his record in 71, when he did the live album. I was like, what? He said, yeah. So George Benson, that record we're listening to, George was in the room in 1971. So I presented it to the bitter end, and they were excited about it. So I took I'm endorsed by Korg, so I have this machine. They'll kill me if I say machine. I have this instrument called the Korg D3200, and it's a digital recorder. It's like walking around with a full recording studio under your arm, 32 tracks. So I connected it to their board, and I got a feed from their board. And I recorded the album at the bitter end. I recorded it, mixed it, mastered it, edited it, did everything myself, and put it out like I do all my records. And I called it Live at the Bitter End, Remembering Donny Hathaway.
Here is a sample of Love, Love, Love from Live at the Bitter End.
Love, love, love. Why'd you take so long to come to me? Oh, baby. And love, love, your love. Tell me where you hiding from me all the time. Each time I tried to find someone to take your place, it was all in vain. No, the lips were never quite the same. No, baby, when I was kissing someone new.
We're finishing off with something that just came out with a duet with Kathy Cousins.
Yeah.
Must Be Dreaming.
Yeah. I must be dreaming. Yes, sir.
Came out October 14th, 2021. And
came out on my son's birthday.
Did you write that song, or did she come to you with that song?
No, actually, what happened was my buddy Keith Knox, the writer actually for Soul Tracks, and he was doing a write-up for Kathy, doing an interview with her for a write-up for something that she has out prior to this. She said that she would like to work with Frank McComb, because he mentioned her to me. So, and she was like, yeah, I remember Frank from a long time ago. We met in Germany somewhere. I'm trying to remember when, because when you move around a lot, it's kind of hard to remember everything. But Keith put us in touch, and she said she was working on an album. And I said, cool, you know, I've got a few things. I can send you something. And I sent this track. I got to pinch myself. I must be dreaming. The track was already done. I had the chorus already written in my head. I just had cut the chorus. But the track was completely done. I just had to polish some things up because I actually did this track for someone else who turned it down. Maybe, what is that, 2017. So I presented it to her, and she said, I'm going to write lyrics to it. The song was originally written for a sax player. It was supposed to be instrumental with just a vocal chorus. But when she heard it, she said, oh, I can definitely write lyrics to this, because she loves to write lyrics. So she wrote the lyrics. And I cut my vocal parts right here in LA. She cut her vocal parts in Detroit and had her engineer send them to me. Now, that's what I love about technology. We don't have to be in the same room to make a hit song. And the song's a hit. It's climbing the charts right now, the indie charts. We didn't have to be in the same room to do it. But because God has blessed me to be so versatile, just like Gerald Levert, I can record the records. I can write them, record them, mix them, edit them, master them, the whole nine myself, and put out my own music. I don't have to depend on anybody, thanks to those producers. So I was able to get this single done in no time flat and get it out. So she's happy with it. I'm happy with it. And radio must be happy with it, because they're spinning it like crazy.
I woke up by myself this morning. I looked around and you were gone. Sometimes you leave without a warning. I never know for just how long. But every time the tide rolls out to sea, it's sure to roll back in again. It's always been the same for you and me, and a love that has no end.
So Frank McComb, thank you very much for joining me today on Something Came from Baltimore.
Man, I love Baltimore. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Beautiful place though. Baltimore is such a beautiful place. But yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate this very much. Good interview.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank McComb, for joining me today on Something Came from Baltimore. Check out his back catalog. It's a breath of fresh air. It's real music, real singing, and he's the real deal. Remember to subscribe to Something Came from Baltimore, then flip to 5 people who love music just as much as we do. We want you all to be a part of that Be More Music scene.
Something came from Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore.